This is so exciting to have this pediatric and young adult focus program. I mean, I've got goosebumps. This has been a really great morning so far. All right, so I was diagnosed at 16 years old, like Ann said, with triple negative essential thrombocythemia. What led to the diagnosis was I basically just collapsed. I lost consciousness in my high school cafeteria. And prior to that, I had been having some ongoing complaints of headaches, dizziness, a lot of fatigue. So it was, a hard answer, but it gave us an answer as to kind of explaining what had been going on for a long time. We had a local hematologist that knew enough to make the diagnosis, but had no idea what to do beyond that. And so we lived in Connecticut at the time. We had access to, some great experts. So Yale and Mount Sinai. I quickly, interferon became a part of my treatment. I spent like 4 years at least. I was on interferon, sometimes a combination of anagrelide up and through my early 20s. It's hard to be a kid on interferon. Honestly, it makes it hard. You can't always keep up with your peers. It can separate you from the crowd when you're need the most to fit in, and so there's some emotional challenges there. In my early 20s, we somehow got this stable platelet count, and I got to come off of interferon. And we kept me on anagrelide for just this little tiny baby dose because no one wanted to take me off everything completely. But eventually, I did. And I spent 10 years with this normal platelet count in the 200,000s, which was a real gift because I got to accomplish a lot. I became a nurse, and I became a nurse practitioner. I got married. I have 2 babies now. Well, they're not babies. They're a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. My first pregnancy went great, no issues, no complications. And during my second pregnancy, strangely, my platelet count increased. I lost that little steady 200,000 count, and I bounced to 600,000. So that got everybody's attention. But the pregnancy still progressed pretty much okay. He was like 9 pounds, 3 ounces. He was huge when he came out. And right after I delivered, my platelets went back down into this normal range again. But I started getting bad migraines again. And my son was like 9 months old. And I wasn't sleeping. I was, there was plenty of reasons to kind of be tired again and not feel well again, having a newborn. And then I had this span of 9 days in a row, the visual changes, migraines, terrible fatigue, and I just finally the light bulb went off. I said, wait a minute, the last time this happened to me, my platelets were over 1 million. So sure enough, in a span of 6 weeks, I had a count of 300,000 to 1.7 million. And so that restarted treatment. I initially was back on anagrelide. I had all these flashbacks of the old version of interferon. I was like, there's no way. I work full time. I've got 2 young babies. I can't do that. But eventually, someone at Weill Cornell consulted with me, and we got me on Pegasus, which is so much better. Oh my gosh, I wish that was around when I was younger. So it's tolerable. I'm on, still on Pegasus, 90 micrograms a week, and I get to, keep my full-time job and run after my 2 kids, and I've got a platelet count that has been pretty steady, controlled up to 500,000. And despite all these good things, I've had just a tough year. I had 6 months ago, I was in the hospital because of multiple bilateral pulmonary embolisms. I had a clot that developed in my pelvis. And that was scary. I had 2 clots in each lung and some complications after that. But, you know, you land on your feet and you just keep going, and you certainly learn a lot about resilience and a lot about yourself growing up with a disorder like this. You have to grow up a little faster, and it can certainly make things more complicated, but I got to figure out a lot early kind of what I was living for and what was important to me. So that's been a really great gift that ET gave me. So it's been a hard year, but they're not all hard years. Most of them are pretty okay. So 2019, I'm like ready to move on. I'll let my mom speak now. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. One second. I just think it's so great because, you know, like our parents do all this advocating for us. I'm 38. She's still doing all this advocating for me. So we're always going to need you, and the support. This is such a misunderstood thing in the outside world. So to have this core support people is, you know, really special.
Don't make me cry. I don't have any neat charts or anything like that, so I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. First of all, Anne, thank you for inviting us. We've known each other for 13 years. Michelle, we've known you forever, as long as you've been with the MPN Research Foundation. We just feel a really close collaboration with both of you. What I'd like to say to the parents and the young patients out there is, I know you wouldn't have wished this for yourself, but welcome to the club. As small as it is, here you are, and you are really doing the right thing by attending these seminars that Anne runs and educating yourself and hearing from the various doctors their professional opinions and learning what is best for you as a patient or for your child as a patient. My journey started when Stephanie was 16, as she explained, and she fell out of her chair, and we were referred to a hematologist-oncologist. And when I heard the word oncologist, all I knew at that time is that they treat cancer patients. And I'm like, can Stephanie possibly have cancer? I mean, why are we going to see an oncologist? So that part was pretty shocking. And we went through the process, the bone marrow biopsy, which I did ask to stay in the room with her while she had her bone marrow biopsy, just to hold her hand. I was not allowed to do that. I was shooed out. And when she came out, did you have lidocaine?
No.
I don't think she had anything. She had been crying and still had tears in her eyes, and that was upsetting for me as a mom. And the local hematologist basically seemed unconcerned. Okay, you've got ET. He kind of dismissed our questions, and he said to us, there are worse things to be diagnosed with. Okay, I know there are worse things to be diagnosed with, but those words were not very comforting to us. So that was upsetting. So his attitude made us uncomfortable, and that's when we decided to take her to Yale, and we found a very caring hematologist, oncologist there that did decide she needed treatment because she was so symptomatic. And I think he told us at that time, now this is 22 years ago, that she was one of maybe 10 children in the United States to have ET. So I tried to cheer her up by telling her she was our 1 in a million. And you know, that can only go so far. So at the time, it was classified as a orphan disease, very rare. It had no cure. It had few treatment options, and it really had very few people even looking at it in the scientific community. And I was devastated as a mom, and, why Stephanie? Why didn't I get it? How did she get it? Was it somehow our fault that she got it? All these things run through parents' heads. I'm sure some of you have felt the same way. But I busied myself with research. I created the medical chart. I had a graph chart of all her counts. I carried a file with me to every doctor appointment. That was something that I could do to be active. And that was something I was going to, excuse me, suggest to you, but I see there's already a lot of very sharp moms in the room that already have those charts created, so you're way ahead of me. Now, another thing for Stephanie that was upsetting for her is that her teenage friends did not understand her illness. And they would say, well, you don't look sick. They were actually kind of mean to her. You don't look sick, you must not be sick. That was hard for her. My own friends didn't get it. We really didn't call ET a cancer 22 years ago. We called it a disorder. And I think when you put the word cancer and attach that to a disease, people understand it better. They may not have heard of that particular cancer, but I think calling it a bone marrow cancer does help people understand it a little bit. So basically, it was kind of hard to find support in our community, but I did find support on the internet. There are quite a few message boards that you could belong to where you could communicate with other parents, of which there were 3 back 22 years ago, or other patients, MPN patients, and you could get some advice and just chat and have some support, which was really great. Stephanie, on the other hand, didn't have much support at all, and I found her becoming a little sad and a little depressed, and she would say to me, Mom, why doesn't anybody care about my disease? Why is nobody working to find that cure? And as a mom, I had always been able to nurse her back to health, whether it was through the chicken pox, the flu, strep throat. She had a tonsillectomy. I was always able to nurse her back to health. This time I couldn't, I had no control. And as a mom, that's hard. I see you shaking your head. It's hard when we have no power to make our child better. But then I had an idea. If her disease was not getting attention from researchers and that made her sad and depressed, I had an idea. I will raise money to pay scientists to research it. That was something that I could do to give my child support and hope and encouragement. So in 1999, I founded Friends of ET Research. A fabulous group of my friends volunteered their time to sit on our board, and we had our first golf tournament in Connecticut, which Ann came to one of our events in 2006. Yeah. We had so much fun, and we raised a lot of money. Our first year, we raised $75,000, and we were shocked. We thought maybe we'd break even the first year. But our community really did rally behind us, and it was a fun tournament. Everybody had a great time. Yeah. And Bob Rosen, who, as you said, sadly is not with us anymore, had founded the MPN Research Foundation about the same year that I founded Friends of ET Research, and we met and liked each other right away, and from the very beginning, I always collaborated with the MPN Research Foundation. They have a medical advisory board that reviews all the research projects. They have all the right wheels in place to move forward research, and I think since your inception, you've raised $12 million? You've given out $12 million.
Around $20 million overall.
Okay, that's awesome. So anyway, since our first event in 2000, we hosted the golf tournament 7 years. My husband retired. We moved from Connecticut to West Palm Beach. I haven't been able to fundraise as well. First of all, Stephanie was in this amazing 10-year remission that none of us could understand, so she wasn't sick. And but still, since the year 2000, I've raised $750,000 for research. So, thank you. Also, when she went into remission, some people suggested that she may have entered a slow turn to MF. And MF, of course, is a little more serious than ET. So, after a few years of her not needing any medication, I took her to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, where there is a world-renowned MPN expert. And we sent all of her paperwork up ahead of time, and he had a chance to review her. She had a bone marrow biopsy, this time under sedation. And,
The only time.
yeah, the only time under sedation. That was your fourth, and now she's had 5. BMBs. But there was absolutely no sign of ET in her body, in her blood, in her bone marrow. There was no sign of it anywhere. We have no idea where it went for 10 years. And without any other explanation, the Mayo doctor told her that she had been touched by God, which I thought was a very lovely and reassuring thing for him to say to us. I mean, because he had no answer. ET is really, remission is not known to occur in ET. Well, as she explained, after the birth of her second child, it came roaring back, and the tears flowed again, and we gathered ourselves up and started to face a diagnosis head on. She was in a bit of denial, to be honest with you, so after... What? She was. So I learned about Anne was hosting a Women and MPN conference in November. This was after she had been diagnosed again in April. And I put her on a plane, flew her to New York City, which we were very familiar with, and she learned 2 important things. Number 1, she needed to find an expert. Her local hematologist, as wonderful as he is, has no experience with MPNs. So like you said, you need to find the director of the symphony. She chose an oncologist in New York City that is her director, and they work beautifully with her local hematologist. The other thing that she learned is she needed to be on better treatment, and that's how she made the transition from anagrelide, which is really bad for your heart, to Pegasus. And of course, her story continues to unfold. I would say the form of ET that came back 10 years later is a bit more viral. She's much more symptomatic. It's more stubborn. And of course, she, this past spring, had the multiple pulmonary embolisms, which that was tough. That was tough. When you can't breathe, that's no fun. But what I have learned through all of this as a mother of an MPN patient is just do as much research as you can. There's so much on the internet. Some of it is not so correct or accurate. Some of it is scary, but you can weed through all of that. Join the message boards. There's a bunch of boards on Facebook. Well, I met Sharon that way. There's a lot of support out there that we really didn't have back in those years, 22 years ago. And be your best advocate for yourself as a patient, and be the best advocate you can be for your child. No one else is going to do it. The doctors aren't going to be your best advocate. So you have to be knowledgeable, and sometimes you have to fight to be on the right treatment. And just finally, one last thing is I want to say, Stephanie, she's, she had to grow up fast. Her dad and I truly look up to her. She finds a way to stay strong under some very, very adverse situations. And this is not to say that she doesn't worry again now that E.T. has returned, but in our opinion, she faces everything with grace and dignity, and we love her to the moon and back. And once again, you truly are our one in a million.